Welcome to the Driving Forward podcast. It's Thursday, February 20th. Whether you're joining us live or listening on one of our 18 platforms, including Wreaths Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time, we appreciate your support. Thursday, February 27th, Melanie Patterson, the founder and managing director of Integrity Global Logistics, will be on the show. She has a wonderful background and a great platform helping logistics providers build, grow, and scale their businesses with government contracting. Extremely excited to talk to Melanie as we align on a lot of things. March 10th through 13th, the ATA TMC, that's the Technology Maintenance Council annual meeting in Nashville, Tennessee. GLCS's very own Susan Mayo and Zach Barnhouse will be there. If you're going to be around, reach out to us. We'd be happy to meet with you and see what you are up to and just in general, love to get together and chat. Almost immediately following TMC is TCA Truckload 2025 in Phoenix. That's March 15th through 18th. Join GLCS's Susan Mayo again. She's moving around this time of year. And Mike Turner, as well as Robert Bain at this event. Carriers, if you haven't signed up, remember, the registration is reduced to $500, and that's also inclusive if you're not a member to TCA now. So members or non-members are $500. If you want more details on this event, visit tcaconvention.com or look back a few weeks on our YouTube channel and watch the episode we had with Xander Gamble and David Heller from the TCA. On to our show. There's a war happening in freight right now. Not on the highways, not in the warehouses, but in the shadows. A silent, invisible war where the enemy doesn't need a gun, just a keyboard. And before you even know you're under attack, the money's gone, the freight's vanished, and the damage is done. Freight fraud isn't just increasing, it's evolving. The scammers are getting smarter, faster, and more sophisticated. They're not just stealing loads, they're hijacking identities, infiltrating systems, and exploiting the weakest links in the supply chains that we've spent decades building. No one is untouchable, not the brokers, not the carriers, not the shippers. And the worst part, most of us are fighting yesterday's battles, while fraudsters are already 3 steps ahead. Today, we're lifting the veil on how deep this problem runs and why cybersecurity is no longer optional. It's simply survival. Danielle Spinelli from Descartes is here. And she's been in the trenches of this fight. She knows how the fraudsters think, where they strike, and what's coming next. If you're in this industry, this isn't just a conversation, it's a wake-up call. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it hasn't been long since I saw you recently. We were both just returning from Las Vegas, a week ago.
Doesn't feel like a week ago. I've been slammed since then, working to catch up.
feels like a few hours ago, to be honest with you. Actually, I didn't even make it home until Friday morning. Our flight got delayed. It was kind of a whole mess. So.
I know, me too. Mine was I got back at 3:30 a.m. is whenever I pulled in my driveway on Friday morning / Thursday night. Yeah.
Did you fly?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm bougie like that. I have to all the details.
Were you on the same flight as Grace then?
I don't know.
Oh,
I didn't. Okay. Maybe. Who knows? I was in my own world at that point.
I think my social
battery was kind of like drained. But Manifest was great. I mean, I talked to so many people, met so many people. Your guys' event was so fun at what was that place called? Black Tap, right?
Black Tap, yes.
Yeah, that was so fun. So crowded. You were kind of a sardine, but you got to meet so many great people. It was awesome.
We just crammed them in there, and we kept it crammed for 3 hours straight. We just we I wish we could have had a bigger venue. Next year, we went and scouted and found a bigger venue. We're gonna really go as many people as we possibly can next year. So I think we unfortunately had to turn away some folks this year. So next year, bigger, better than ever, and should be a lot of fun next year. So
yeah, of course, GLCS always is bigger and better next year or next time or whatever. As your guys is always doing bigger things. No, it was really fun and like you said, lots of people in there, so lots of networking. Got to meet a lot of people. Kind of that whole vibe of Manifest was that like that for you?
Yeah, I'm not even sure what happened. I walked in the door. I kind of wrote about it yesterday. I walked in the door, and so every conference that I go to, every conference that we as a team go to, we meet and build a game plan on. And we had a game plan for Manifest, and I think for the first time in a long time, just the conference team has struggled the last couple of years. And we walked in the door at Manifest, and the game plan went out the window very fast, and in a positive way, in an extremely positive way. We've had it go out the window in the past in a not positive way, and we've had to moving from engaging people in person to creating social media engagement at conferences. And Manifest absolutely went the opposite. I did not post anything on social for a week personally because of all the in-person engagement that was happening. I mean, it absolutely was a wonderful event, and it's hard to think you got to wait a whole nother year to go back to it. So excited to do some planning and figure out what we can do to partner with Manifest and a few other organizations for next year. So
yeah, no, I agree. And honestly, I learned there's logistics is so vast, and I've been in logistics for about 10 years now, and I don't know anything about warehousing. I know nothing about rail. I know nothing about ocean. Like as I was there, I was like, wow, I don't know anything. Like I thought I knew so much about logistics, but really it's just in my little, I guess, area, full truckload or LTL, and mainly fraud. That's like where, like you said earlier, that's kind of my specialty, I guess. But there's so much to logistics. So there's so much tech out there that you're like, oh yeah, that would have been a problem if that was, back when I was a broker, and somebody actually came up with a great tech to fix that. So Manifest was a great spot to learn and see so many cool things on all, like a full 360 view on logistics.
I agree. As you walk in the door, you realize just how vast it is, especially on the technology side. And I sent a couple pictures to a friend of mine who's more in the Microsoft space, and he said, yeah, that's definitely not anything like we see at any of our conferences. And
oh, really?
Yeah, it's not even in why they still have headcount, sometimes larger headcount. It's not the same experience, not the same interaction that they experience, and much more, in some ways, much more reserved. And I think when you mix technology and supply chain, you get sort of a unique experience on that.
Yeah.
But also, because technology is so new to transportation and logistics. I mean, it's not new, but the adoption rate is so exponential right now. And transportation's always been cowboys. So no matter how you look at it, that's not changing.
Yeah.
When transportation decides to do something, it gets all in it. So it might take 10 years to decide to do.
I was gonna say it's definitely a slow adoption rate, but it does eventually happen once they see the benefit. But it definitely, and I think a big part of that is a lot of like customers. A lot of people don't talk about it, and I think the difference nowadays is there's a bunch more podcasts and a bunch more things online that we're all talking about. What does your tech stack look like? What benefits you here and there where that wasn't available before, and people were hoarding their own secrets of their success. Where now I think it's a lot more open, and like those type of conferences, they talk about it.
they talk about it, and you just simply look at, once everybody starts to understand what everyone's doing, uh, the 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 service providers that are out there, whether it's broker, carrier, or shipper, that wants the solution, when they decide they want it, they absolutely want it right now. Uh,
Yeah.
that's oh, so I bought the solution. How fast can you implement it? It's not.
Hmm.
I'm okay implementing this over the next 12 to 24 months, dependent upon the solution. I really would like this done as fast as you possibly can do it, and I don't want to wait for it. So that's um, certainly this industry, and that hasn't changed in my year. I've been in the industry 28 years, and that hasn't changed in 28
Yeah.
years. So
No, me being in tech sales, I mean, I sell TMS, macro point visibility, and then my care portal. And so same thing. They're like, "Hey, I need this tomorrow. Can you do it?" I'm like, sure.
right,
We'll see what we can do."
we'll
But
figure it out.
yeah.
So let's start off with a little bit about yourself. Give us the quick, because you haven't been on the show at all before. So quick
I'm a newbie.
overview of who you are, and you're certainly not new to podcasts, but quick overview, like the 3 minute Danielle Spinelli story, and then we'll jump into to some freight fraud stuff.
Cool. Yeah, so as far as like the logistics industry, I've been in it for, I think I'm right at 10 years now. I was a broker for 8 years, mainly in carrier sales. I did a lot of high value. I started off with postal freight mainly, and then I switched over to high value freight, like copper, electrical wire mainly. And with that high value, really got into trying to prevent our loads being stolen left and right, because that was, telling the drivers to drive so many miles and to avoid, a rest stop here and making sure you're not being held at gunpoint and all that craziness. So really had to learn how to vet carriers, and luckily my owner at the time was really good at it. She taught me a whole bunch of stuff, and then we switched over to using my care portal. So taking away a lot of the manual process. So I was a user of my care portal for about 3 years, and then kind of had a situation where I almost had a load stolen. And luckily, my care portal I had those protections in place. I actually wrote our other sales rep, who's been in with the company forever, and on LinkedIn, it was like, "Hey, you guys saved my butt today. This was great. Thank you so much, whatever." And then kept talking, and then basically just came on board as a sales rep there. And then we recently got acquired by Descartes, so now part of that whole family. So yeah, it's kind of my logistics story.
Oh, fair enough. That comes full circle. So
Yeah.
yeah. So great. Well, it's great to have you on the show. So it's
Thank you
great.
for having me.
You reached out a couple months ago and we're like, when do I get to come on? So yeah,
Well, it's so funny. I post this, I know, on LinkedIn, but I'm like, "You're my fellow Minnesotan guy. I grew up right next to you. So come on, hook me up."
yeah. couple couple miles away from my home, or from my childhood home. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. The world is small. And then last week we had Nick Darman on, and he has a connection to Prior Lake too. So the
Oh,
founder of
really? I'll have to
Valve,
meet him.
there's, there's a connection there as well. So his extended family has a connection there also. So Prior Lake is a
Oh,
thing. So
I
yeah,
guess so. Who would have thought?
great connections. There's some other folks that I can, 7 degrees of separation from Prior Lake. But all right. So all right, let's start off with this. So how did in your opinion, how did the industry let freight fraud get this bad? You think it was, negligence, a lack of accountability, or do you think that people just suddenly started getting greedy? Or I mean, what's your opinion on this?
I think it started with double brokering. I think double broker has always been there. I think prior to really now it's theft from double brokering is what the big problem is. I think double brokering's always been there, kind of had a blind eye to it because freight was getting delivered. You as a broker were still paying the same amount to whatever carrier you hired. You didn't really know who delivered it, but it was getting delivered. Whether or not they cut some piece off the top, you didn't really care because there wasn't an issue with your shipper and with your customer. So I think it's always been there. I think it's definitely been those guys who were double brokering realize that, hey, there is a way that we can even make more money. And some of those bad guys just learned more about the logistics industry, and now it's really ran rapid. And unfortunately, FMCSA has not done us any favors up until, I know they're making changes now, but has not done us any favors with the whole thing. So it's just been like floodgates have been opened, especially during COVID and after COVID. That really blew everything up, I think. So,
Yeah, I think, well, a massive increase during COVID. I think that was just
mhm.
because there was, I mean, at first there was margin there to be had. So,
Yeah.
the double brokering side had the margin to it. But going back, looking back throughout my career, double brokering was largely just lazy sales opportunities. You go,
Mhm.
or it was someone who was afraid to throw back a load at a broker because they didn't want to break
Yeah.
a relationship. And
True.
largely that was how it was many many years ago. Or in some cases it was a mistake. It was a data mistake of some kind. So, and those would happen. I mean, there are large brokers. You would go back through the chain of orders, and you would see crazy scenarios of how loads would move 25 years ago. It
Right.
was wild and rampant. Whether you call it co-brokering or double brokering, however you want to look at it, but certainly in the last 4 years, this has gotten to be wild. So,
Mhm.
so
Well,
I
and really, it's like I said too, like it's the theft. Like it's not making it to
right,
deliveries. Brokers are having to fork out so much money. And then on top of that, insurance companies are saying we're not paying this either, even though it's stolen freight. That's why we have insurance. But their clause is fraud, that doesn't count. It's wild. So
yeah,
really, I think that's the industry has realized, oh my gosh, I'm having to fork all this out. I don't have an insurance company have my back on it. And I think insurance companies are now realizing that it's a big enough of an issue where they're going to lose customers a lot of times, and customers are going to go to those insurance companies that are protecting them. So I'm hoping that changes, as long as, like, I was talking to an insurance company here who's working on integrating with my care portal, and their whole philosophy is kind of, hey, if you are using a vetting platform like my care portal, you're following like what our standards are. You've done everything you can do to prevent that, so we would cover your load. And so I hopefully that part changes, because that's been wild in itself too. The whole almost like an insurance scam at this point, because they haven't covered anything.
right. Yeah. If you're meeting particular practices, that's one thing. There is negligence out there though too,
Yeah,
and we've
for
seen
sure.
a lot of that, and that's steps that we actually provide. I mean, we do some health checks here at GLCS for some of our customers and prospects that just say, are you meeting minimal guidelines, in our opinion, to prevent freight fraud or cybercrime, cyber theft
Right.
as well. And a lot of companies don't even realize what capabilities are out there. They might know some capabilities that are out there in the way of solutioning, but just simple practices that uh, companies can take to prevent some of these measures are um, yeah, just training in
I
general.
was gonna say,
Just
we
training.
updated our whole
90
training program. Yeah,
90
we updated.
be eliminated. So go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I keep interrupting. I'm really sorry.
No.
No, we updated our whole training program because really we don't have that same generation like we had before, where it's the guy who's been doing it for 20 years and he already has a sense of who they're talking to on the phone. We're having people like fresh out of college jumping in, getting thrown into a load board or something, and filtering calls trying to make quick money. So I really, we had to restructure our whole training program. I'm glad you guys do this too, where, hey, if you see this red flag, or like, we'll give you the tools to show you what's like a possible red flag or what is a true red flag, and do not use these guys. But if there's the ones where it's like, let's, possibly this could have happened, you need to know what to do from that point too. So what's the next, what do you do from there? Call the guy, have a conversation with them. What questions should you ask? We have like a VIN verification process. Verify exactly who you're working with. Does that truck belong to this carrier or not? It's it's a lot more than, I don't. There's no system in the world, and if there is, they would be like the top selling thing out there, but there's not a system out there that's totally 100% foolproof. And there's not going to be, because they keep coming up with new ways too. So
the moment you have something out there, they're figuring out a way around it. So, and unfortunately, that's their job. So, that's
yeah,
truly the scenario is they're out there working to beat us. So, and
yeah.
there's literal offices of people out there that are figuring this stuff out. So, if you had to name the biggest mistake brokers and carriers make that open the door for fraud, what would you say it is?
I would say biggest mistake is not trusting their gut. Every time something's happened, they would say, I knew it. I knew something was off. I knew it. Trust your gut. When you're talking to people, what it's, you just know. I don't know. It's weird to say that. You can't teach that either, which is hard. I'm sure you realize that with training too. People, you're like, if they sound weird, if they sound off, they're not giving you information as quickly or too quickly. Something's off. So I think that's the biggest thing. But then also, if you do see red alerts, just because it's 4:59 on Friday, you want to get out of there. Do your due diligence, follow your processes, do not deviate just because you're trying to get out of the office. That's when fraud comes in typically.
Oh, great point. And following the gut is absolutely true. I can't tell you how many times where honestly, I would extend that to everything in life.
Yeah.
When it feels off and you're an expert on something, definitely lean towards your experience and
Right.
sometimes beyond that. So, but very true. And due diligence is important. So every time you take a shortcut and you look back and how many times do you get exploited because you take a shortcut? So,
yeah,
and there's nobody there to blame when you take that shortcut other than yourself. So,
right.
100%. What's the biggest myth about fraud prevention that keep companies vulnerable, do you think?
That's a good question. I think the biggest myth, as far as for like whenever you're vetting a carrier, if they're a good or bad guy, that really it's the no inspection data and the time in service. Just because they're brand new and they have no inspections does not mean that they're a bad guy. That's not a foolproof tell sign. I think there's however that all got started. Maybe in the very beginning it was like that, but now DOT has made it where it's so much more difficult to get an inspection. That's just not viable. Now, I do still think that when you see those red flags, you should vet them further and make sure they really have a truck. But that does not mean they're a bad guy. Let's move past that.
That never was a great way to do it. The vast majority of the fleets out there don't actually have inspections. So,
Right.
that's always been a problem, and it was never a great way. Does it identify fraudsters and issues? Yes, they're probably in that bucket, but
Maybe.
maybe very, very true, because
Yeah.
they could be in the others as well. But it definitely created a scenario where it's hard to start a new company. And those that are trying to begin, you look at the pathway to start a new trucking company, and it very much so involves the spot market. And this blocks that.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Nobody can get started. And they wonder why rates are the way it is too. Well, there's no new companies coming into play because you guys have shut everyone down basically because they can't have freight, or they have to sit on an MC and work for somebody else. And
Which makes no sense.
It makes no sense. What's happening right now, especially with rates, that is truly because people were not educated enough in the fraud and what's going on with fraud. And it's really crippled, I think, a lot of the growth that we were having with new carriers. So
let's move on to, I think that's a good segue into sort of the cost of fraud and how it impacts, individual people. Have you ever, I'm sure you've had the conversations with the actual business owners after they get scammed. I've had those conversations, unfortunately.
yeah.
How does it feel when a business owner calls you after they've been scammed, and what's your opinion on the emotional toll that's on these companies?
I've honestly have had a whole range of emotions. I'm sure you have too, where the business owner is mad at one person, they feel guilt, or they feel, sadness, what like all the emotions out there. I feel like, a lot of times they're angry because they did not take the right steps. Honestly, almost every single time it's either that they do not have a process in place to vet, or like they don't have a way of checking things, or that they deviated from that process. That's typically when something happens. So then they're mad at the rep for doing that. But then also taking a step back too. Hey, get mad at that rep for that. But how much pressure did they have on them to get that load covered? Why didn't we have a conversation with the customer? Hey, I either have like this guy who does not look the best, like, let's take this risk together, Mr. Shipper, or let's ship this on Monday morning. Like I get how freight is. I totally understand the relationship with shippers, but I think shippers are well aware of the fraud issues too, and they don't want their stuff getting stolen either. Um, so I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway that I try to tell people is, let's step back. What could he be done differently next time? And then I also feel like we get into like total detective mode. Like, let's dig everywhere we can on these guys, and
Right.
find out any information that we can, and how can we have fixed this earlier. So I love hearing all the stories. Like, hey, like I hate that happened to you, but I want to know every little juicy detail, because that one small detail could have been something that one of our systems could have, changed and prevented this from happening, type thing. So, what about yourself?
Uh, I've had the whole first off, hey potato. Uh, um, so I've had the whole spectrum as well. I've had the large fleet that hauls a substantial amount of spot market. Large fleet meaning, close to 1,000 truck fleet that hauls 70% spot market, basically being shut down from booking spot market due to fraud, where the owners are nearly in tears because 70% of their fleet can't move right now, and they've
Wow.
been unable to move. And I don't get into specifics because I don't need to give a playbook, but and
Right.
then down to um, individual scenarios where a brokerage that has had loads hijacked for various reasons, and you get into those scenarios where you're doing a post-mortem of what did we do wrong, and
Right.
you're moving a lot of loads a day, especially at a larger brokerage. You might be moving um 10-20 loads a day, and you one thing can go wrong, and you miss one detail, and that's it. I mean, you lose the load, and that
Mhm.
can be one minor detail. So this can happen to anyone, and it's really about a repetitive process and the proper tracking, and following those processes and ensuring them right. So that post-mortem is important, and ensuring that you don't make the mistake. Sometimes that costs people's jobs. Other times this is a process that had a couple holes in it and it needs to be shored up. And that's, I think, important for every company to look at. Some cases, it's just simply your technology solutions were not well
Yeah.
established, or you have holes in it as an organization, and that needs to be fixed. And, you know, these are conversations that are sometimes hard, and need to be have. So if you're not, as an organization, if you're not comfortable with your technology solutions, this is something that does need to be looked at. And you
Totally.
are very exposed to these type of things. If you don't realize it, you are extremely exposed to something going wrong, and you might not have any idea how that might be. There's been some very crazy stories that
Mhm.
thrown out there. So,
Well,
but go ahead.
sorry. What's interesting, well, right now, I'm actually on like the TIA, like fraud guard task force. I can't remember the exact words, but we were just talking about a big problem that, and I think this has been going on a long time too, but not enough spotlight. I think this has really been hitting people lately. Is you'll be working with a carrier for like a good year. They're like a core carrier, because that's another thing that I preach to: relationships with carriers, relationships. Well, what's happening here lately is it'll be somebody you've been using. They run great. You won't see any issues with them, And then eventually, after running them for a while, they'll, especially if you're working with like higher value freight, like I had a situation I was talking to a prospect about that they had like just certain numbers of falsifying the bills, pulling pallets off, and enough to where it was over 30 loads with one carrier. They had no idea until the receiver was like, "Hey, by the way, where's our inventory at?" And you're like, "What? What are you talking about?" Months later. I mean, so
Right.
that's that whole thing that's happening with that too. I mean, that's another thing. How do you stop that whenever it's somebody you work with all the time? And that's something that I preach all the time too. Carrier relationships, use the same carrier over and over again, really build relationships, but that could happen to you as well. So then
Well,
figuring out that process and how do you prevent that? How do you stop that when when the receivers aren't communicating with the shippers like they should too? It's
well,
wild out there. It's wild, wild west for sure.
you after doing this as long as I have, you never are surprised by anything, but uh that doesn't change that same statement. Work with the same people and
Right.
build relationships. And sometimes you still find out that that doesn't work out. But out of the 1,000 stories where it does work out, there's maybe 3 that you get
Right.
when it really does come down to those transparent, open relationship. Maybe a percentage is different than that, but there's very few that you are going to find out that you have something as wildly fraudulent as what you just stated.
Right.
Certainly, some things can happen that shouldn't happen. Carriers can make mistakes. Things can get crossed. Especially if you're in LTL stuff. Weird stuff can happen. So
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of people involved. So best of intentions, but to have something repetitively happen like that over and over and over is
Wild.
unfortunate. So yeah.
Yeah, I do agree. And another thing you were talking about earlier about your tech stack too, and missing something. I mean, I remember prior to having like a service that it was like we had this checklist that we had to go through every time. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, like, oh my God, I think I forgot to check this one thing. What if that one thing means my load's stolen? I'd have to log on like as soon as I could in the morning time, check on my load. I mean, freaking out because I may have forgotten something because of the volume that you're working with and because of how fast everything is. So tech is just like whoever you have to have it, like not pushing any products, just saying you got to have something to help automate that. Because if you're dealing with any type of volume, you need something to at least make that process quicker so you can still do all your due diligence.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
If you could snap your fingers, and fix one major weakness in freight security today, what would it be?
I would say if we could, if somehow in the world we could fix the spoofing or not the spoofing, the phishing attempts, the hacking into emails, if that right there could get fixed, check what links you're clicking on and stuff. I think that would prevent so many issues that we
Right.
have going on out there. And then at least we would know who really are the criminals, not who's posing as a real carrier and then is a criminal. If we could snap our fingers, that would be one thing that I think would make a big difference.
Yeah, I probably am in alignment with you there. That's a massive amount of the issues. The ability to honestly, that stems the majority of the issues that we see as well,
Right.
even on cybercrime, just the phishing attempts. So it's wild what can stem from that.
Yeah.
Um,
And with working for a corporate company now, I mean, right whenever we got acquired, I had to deal with like all these training videos. I mean, hours of training videos on cybersecurity. And then we even have like for our I guess whoever IT departments send us fake phishing attempts emails trying to get us to catch it and then trying to catch us from not catching it. And then you have to go through a whole nother course. Luckily I haven't been caught yet, but
yeah,
you need to kind of sharpen your tools and have something like that, especially if you're a larger carrier or brokerage, because it's happening to both brokers and carriers too. It's not just on the carrier side that they're having these, cyber attacks really, I guess.
and we offer that as a service to our managed IT customers. So
That's
we
cool.
do training on a monthly basis. We do the same thing internally. So and we our internal folks are pretty crafty on their ways of trying to convince everybody. Because when you're working with a company that's trying to protect other companies, you want to be super
Yeah.
crafty on everything, to the point where I would say 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been paying a whole lot of attention to those things. I mean, I always have paid attention to them, but 2 or 3 years ago was one thing. And I was actually I had a surgery earlier this year, beginning of January. And I woke up one morning and I was flipping through. I was maybe under the spell of medication. I was flipping through my email and I clicked on something. Yeah. And I was like, oh no. And I got a hold of our IT department. There's no way 3 years ago I would have jumped right out to our IT department and said, I just did this. So
Yeah.
turns out it ended up being nothing, but it wasn't even one of their phishing attempts, which, however it works. But let's do a quick break here. And if you guys have a question for Danielle or anything around cyber security or freight fraud, queue them up and shoot them over while we're on break. It'll just be a couple minutes, and we'll look forward to continuing the conversation when we get back. If your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the fast-paced world of trucking and logistics, time is everything. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep transportation and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them. With our industry connections and proactive approach, we keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise. What is up? We are live from Matt's.
It's just a great experience to celebrate trucking and celebrate the industry and get out and just kind of get pumped up for the busy season.
That's the first time I saw that Matt's commercial. You guys rocked it on that. That's awesome. We had to push that out the Mats. So
I'm actually going to Matt's this year. Yay! I'm excited. First time.
Oh, we're doing another event at Matt's. So,
well, I'm coming then because I don't know anybody, like none of my regular tech people are going because most of the time, like we all, sell to brokers, I guess. So it's not like a thing there, but I'm going because I'm wanting to talk to carriers and see, hey, how do you think about my carrier portal? How do you think about MacroPoint? What are things we can improve on? How awesome are we? No, just kidding. But yeah, that's why I'm going, getting carrier feedback. So pretty excited about it.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll have to connect up and see. We're doing an event Friday, which announcing that now, I guess. We're doing it Friday night. We're honing in on the time because there's a concert Friday night. So I think we're locking in either 8 or 9 o'clock starting. So it'll be a Freight Movement Broker Carrier Summit Big Road Tour event. It's at the Tavern downtown. It's actually above the Tavern downtown. We're going to have DJ karaoke, up to 250 people. Working out. Anybody wants to partner with us, we're taking on partnerships right now. So I sort of got overwhelmed with Manifest, so we're just working out. We had to wait till the moratorium of Manifest came off before we could announce all of our stuff. So we're excited to do the Mats thing. Mats last year was just an awesome event, and we're doing it all over again this year. So
let's go party.
Yeah, that's
party with Nate.
Karaoke thing all over again. So we did actually. Chris Thomas was on that Matt's commercial. So we did a great karaoke event last year. Well, figure Trey put it together last year. We all went
Oh,
walking
figure that. Yeah.
out doing whatever. And Hunter from Truck Parking Club, I'll never forget that one. He walked in, grabbed the mic from a guy, and just started ripping, and it was hilarious. So it was a good night. So
What's your go-to karaoke song, Nate?
I have a tendency to just default to Billy Joel. So
Oh, you're really? I
so,
can see
yeah,
you as a
you
Billy Joel
missed,
guy.
you missed Charlie and I the other night.
I know
So
I
we were
did.
Billy Joel. So yeah, we actually got up there and did a pretty good job. That was the first time I've done karaoke in a long time. So
Yeah, you guys won't see me up there, but if I do it, it would be No Doubt. That's the only one I can kind of do. But
fair enough. So
oh potato.
yeah. So yeah, and we're gonna be sharing some space with Logistics Lounge folks for driving forward. So we'll have a whole bunch of people from GLCS and Freight Movement at Matt's as well. So excited about that. Yeah, I have an unedited. Well, we have a lot. Well, you have the whole video. I have the whole video of Hunter. You probably have the whole video of Indy. So yeah, fair enough. I don't know if Indy's coming to Matt's either. So we'll have to see. All right, back to freight fraud. All right.
Freight fraud.
So, big question. Whose fault is it when fraud happens? Broker, tech company, shipper, or is everybody to blame? What's your thoughts on this one?
I mean, honestly, I feel like shippers and brokers are the biggest thing. Depends on the tech, depends on what you saw. I mean, sometimes it is where you have those red flags and you just simply overlook those and still set them up. That's kind of on you for doing that. So I guess every situation is different, I think. But at the end of the day, really having knowing exactly who your truck is, having that conversation with shippers, and then shippers being willing to actually check everything whenever they go out there. But still, it can still happen where, hey, this guy is picking up the load, but then it gets transloaded and somebody else has it, and then the load's gone. I mean, it can happen to anybody. It's like I said, wild west out there. So it's hard to point a finger at one person because it can happen to anybody, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think every incident is kind of its own unique scenario, and you have to roll it back and see the situation, and that's what ultimately is what's insurance for, because insurance is by default there for mistakes. And
Right.
part of the problem right now is they have clauses in there around the fraudulent behavior, and they're able to get around this, but in many cases you have proper processes being taken, everything's correct, and they're still able to not cover the incident,
Which is wild. Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but that to me is insanely wild. I don't know how they're getting away with that. To me, if you can prove that you show your due diligence, and I have seen it where there's been an official lawsuit against the insurance company, and hey, here's all my due diligence, my paperwork and everything, and they won. I think that's not happening enough. I don't think enough brokers are actually fighting back with these insurance companies. They're kind of laying down oh, well, that's what it says. There is a clause. No, if you've done your due diligence through and through, there's literally nothing else you could have done except for sitting in that truck, that should be covered. So.
I guess the comment about karaoke was from Stephanie Sharp. If you know Stephanie, I don't know Stephanie, but Stephanie, if you're going to be at Matt's, come hang out with us, and we'll love to do karaoke with you. So, or if I do know you, Stephanie, my apologies. Sometimes I'm better with faces than with names. So the LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm like that too.
All right. So regulators and industry leaders are taking freight. Or do you think they're taking freight fraud serious? Or do you think it's just kind of a lip service? I mean, this has been a long time. FMCSA is sort of,
Yeah.
They say, this is going on a year. Last year, Matt's is when they said they were going to take action, and we've heard it a couple of times now, and I can't really say that there's been massive action taken.
No, I think that brings up a good point. So I'm sure you know Dale Prax he does Freight Validate, who's integrated with us. So Descartes and like my care portal Descartes and then Dale Prax, we both have been working with FMCSA for a long time trying to fix things. I will say Dale Prax has really paved the way for FMCSA. Tons of progress. Like one thing that I don't think that anybody knows about, it's not talked about enough, is that he literally fixed the virtual addresses from being a registration point
Right.
with FMCSA to the point where it's less. They find like over, I can't really remember the number, but it's like I want to say it's like over 200 carriers a month. Maybe it's 2,000. I don't know. It's an insane amount of carriers per month that get rejected because of virtual addresses that would have not been rejected before. So I do think they're taking steps. They are aware of the problem. Ken Riddle is a really good one that he's really listening and cares. He was at the Broker Care Summit in Texas. Were you there? I think you were, right? Yeah.
I was there. I listened to Ken. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what they are wanting to do is awesome. Do I think it will happen quick enough? No. I think by the time it comes out, they're gonna have to come up with a whole new thing.
Right.
I know I talked to Ken not that long ago, and he was saying with the new president and the new everyone in place, they're trying to figure out what exactly can go on from here, like spending and the Doge and all that stuff too. So we'll see. But I definitely think as far as like the main head leaders of freight, like the big boys out there, I think they're getting hit too, but they're not talking about it. They really don't care. They write a check. And I think that's where a lot of stuff comes through. So I don't know. I think the small to medium brokers, carriers are the ones that are really getting hurt the most.
Yeah, I agree. The ones that don't have influence and don't have the power to kind of command, and also those
Right.
that are not self-funded or self-insured, that have to kind of follow certain lines with their insurance companies and kind of have to follow narratives. So
Yeah. Well, and even the fact that, like Pedro Potato is saying,
should have just brought
even
him on the show. I mean,
I know
yeah,
he's our biggest commentary right now.
yeah.
No, with what he's saying too, like I mean, even the fact that if you do like I've had it where I've talked to a customer and we've had like tracking on the guy. I can see exactly where this guy is at. I'm calling the police, like I know exactly where this dude is at. Just drive there, please, and they
Yeah,
won't do
they
it. It's
won't.
like
They
what?
won't. That's
It's
been
wild. It's wild.
been some of our discussions is we know where they're at. Call local law enforcement. They don't know what to do. You call,
Yeah.
federal law enforcement. They're not going to do anything. So,
Yeah, the freight wasn't enough volume, high enough volume. I mean, whatever.
enough
Yeah,
value. Yeah, it's
value. That's
or
what I'm thinking.
value, or it's not my problem. It's whatever the case may be. But yet but I mean, if it's a $2,000 car, they'll do something about it. So
Exactly.
it
That's
makes
Grand Theft Auto, a federal crime. Yeah.
right. So it absolutely makes no sense. But yet we wonder why prices at the shelves are going up and et cetera, et cetera. So,
Right.
that and to the Ken Riddle topic, he'll also be speaking at Matt's on this topic as well. So they'll
Good.
be revisiting it a year later. I plan to sit in on that session, assuming that I don't get manifested again. So, which I don't think I will at Matt's. That's a different animal. And if you've never been to Matt's before, it's 60 to 70,000 attendees. So it's
What?
whole nother level of
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's going to be
over
overwhelming.
3 days. It's not like the same attendees; they come and go on a daily basis, but it does go bonkers. So.
Wow, that's wild. Yeah, I'm excited to go. Everybody says the who's are there, so I want to go. But
Yeah.
I'll probably be like hanging around my friends, you guys, because I don't know anybody.
We'll be around, so we'll have to connect, make sure that you're in the right spot and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I'll follow up with you on that. But,
Yeah.
So so this one I'd like to. So I kind of etched this one out. So what's your opinion if someone is getting scammed and they've figured it? So they've now figured it out. There's a scam happening, or it's already happened. What's your recommendation on the first thing someone should do?
Good question. First thing, go ahead and get both parties of insurances on board. Some I've seen super rarely, but sometimes contacting the other insurance company, they're able to actually get the load to be delivered. It is so rare, like it's really not even worth mentioning, but maybe. But insurance companies first, and then authorities second. Well, I guess technically you should do authorities first, insurance companies second, and then really at that point, like for instance, I always contact Dale Prax. He's able to like investigate like no other. He should
Right.
become an investigator, I swear. But he's able to see like on the business license. Sorry, what?
I think he is an investigator at this point. It's like
I know.
Freight Verify Investigative Services. So
Yeah, it's wild what he can find. And like even the heist that happened on 4th of July this past year, I mean, because of his stuff that he found within the business licenses, they were able to recover I think it was like 40 loads that were being held hostage. But so yeah, right there alone, and then I think just doing as much as you can, to dig in, and then being in front of your customer about it. But as soon as you find out, hey, Mr. Customer, this is what's going on. This is what I've done already. This is where I'm at. Because at the end of the day, you want to stay face with your customer. You don't want to lose your customer over a stolen load. You don't want to be the one that maybe they're like, oh, well, were they in on it, or that type of thing. So you want to be as direct and upfront with your customer as possible. But yeah, start digging, and I wish I had a whole playbook on that, but that's actually something that Descartes I was talking to our general manager about, saying, what if we had like an investigative team, like what if, and they help out when something does happen, because that's not out there yet, which they should. So
yeah, so Dale was in the Marines as well, but I like the idea of the playbook of and whether it's through Descartes or it's through an insurance company,
right,
whatever the case, if you're carrying insurance for that type of scenario, there should be some form of playbook to kind of direct the
you would hope so.
broker through that scenario. So here's a question from Jerry Brooks. Maybe it's already been discussed. Any tips on spotting fraudulent listings on load boards?
As far as if a carrier is looking at a broker, we'll
So.
go that route first. On that route first, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. If the rate's posted super high, it is too good to be true. Also call the broker. Like, hey, is this actually your guy that's discussing this with me? Even like if you're not set up with that broker already and you're doing a packet, for instance, them having any type of service, we're vetting our customers as well. So having something like that, if the broker's asking you lots of questions as far as vetting, like, hey, send me this, or tell me about this about yourself, whatever, that's kind of like a green light status on them. Now, if you're a broker looking at carriers posted, I pick up the phone and call people. Like, just verify on their FMCSA and know who you're talking to. I think we've really gotten away from phone calls and really have pushed, emails and stuff. But even if it's your dispatch team, even if it gets through your main sales rep or whatever, and the rate sheet gets sent, but now you're at the driver level, have them call them and ask them. If you're asking the driver enough questions, a lot of times they'll start acting weird on the phone or start slipping, and typically you can catch something. And like I said, we have like a VIN verification on our part. So even doing like an extra step like that will help you. But the load boards are definitely where we're seeing a lot of the most fraud coming in is stuff like that. So
Great answer. And I something that you said a lot there was phone. So
yeah.
in talking. So which I think is, it sort of rolls back. We picking up the phone and talking to the person, verifying that they're real, verifying that having your list of questions that you ask everyone, and ensuring that there's a meaningful conversation, that they're not just trying to expedite their way through that. That's definitely what we recommend as well. And in many cases, if you're a broker, make sure that you follow your due diligence as well. I'm going to add on to that because I know Jerry was talking about the carrier side, but on the broker side, get a signed rate confirmation back from the carrier. If you're worried about something, call the carrier on their office line on their website. Ensure that they're answering it and that they're seeing the rate confirmation. Some of the largest issues we've seen have been carriers that get dispatched without signed rate confirmations, and the driver calls in for dispatch, and the broker's deviating from process. So, but definitely phone calls and following process. So I got a whole bunch of other it's Pedro doing.
Well, I was going to add on to that. And I don't mean to keep throwing my product in there, but
No,
we have, I really not like that, I promise, but we have a user verification. And so one of the big frauds that we're seeing too is it would be like a major broker or major carrier that most people are set up with. Most people have a contract in place already. So you see the name and you're like, oh, we're already set up with these guys. Let's just shoot over a rate sheet, or I'm accepting a rate sheet because I already know I've worked with them before. So as far as on our standpoint, since we just have brokers, but broker to carrier, we have a user verification, copy and paste their email in there, and it will tell you whether or not it belongs to that carrier or not. And if it doesn't, we handle that whole process manually and confirming that it actually belongs to the carrier by either calling the carrier, hey, FMCSA number, hey, does this email actually belong to you guys? And then they get added as a user verified, or another user who is verified can do their two-factor authentication login and approve that person that, hey, yeah, this is my dispatcher or whatever. So
great. So just staying in your ecosystem then just improves that whole process generally.
Yeah. Right.
Perfect. So so to answer your question about Dale, he was an investigator in the Marines. So if you didn't comments, so that
he is an investigator.
He is an investigator, and he's in the Marines and retired from the Marines. I know that from Dale. So he's been around a while. So not to mention his second or third career now in freight. So, So Danielle, this has been great. We're coming up on the hour. So how can everyone find you?
Yes. So I'm on LinkedIn, Danielle Spinelli. Hit me up, add me. And especially if you have stories about, hey, this scam has happened to me, if you're a carrier, broker, shipper, I want all the stories. Promise I won't say names out there. I just want stories and be able to dig deep on it. Like I said, that's how our company gets better at, hey, maybe if we added this in there, or maybe if we had this being checked, this would have prevented this. Because that's really how we know is from people on the front lines. So hit me up on there. mycareportal.com is my main product, or you can email me at dspinelli@descartes.com.
Awesome. This has been great. The hour went by super fast. Like we said, we would just chat it up, and blink, gone. We almost missed the commercial. But here in a few weeks, we'll be at Matt's. I'll get in touch with you. We'll figure out stuff to collaborate on.
That'd be fun.
Go from there. But I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right,
hey, everybody.
Freight fraud isn't just a problem. It's a full-scale attack on the industry, and money is vanishing, trust is crumbling, and the worst part, scammers aren't slowing down. They're getting smarter, faster, and bolder, exploiting every weak link we've left exposed. So here's the reality check. This isn't someone else's problem. It's your problem. And the question is, will you act now, or will you wait until it's your freight, your money, and your business on the line? Danielle Spinelli and the team at Descartes are leading the charge, exposing the cracks and fighting back. And at GLCS, we're right there in the trenches, helping companies lock down their systems, tightening their security, and stay ahead of the fraudsters. Because here's the truth, fraud isn't going away, it's evolving. And if you're not ready for what's coming next, you're not just at risk, you're already a target. Stay sharp, stay protected, stay ahead, and stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation. Thanks for watching.